So there's this game coming out in July called Ghost of Tsushima. I'm pretty excited for it, and I figured it'd be fun to replay one of my favorite games of 2019 leading up to its release. That game would be Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Both are action-adventure titles set in Japan. From what I gather, in Ghost you play a samurai, and in Sekiro you play a shinobi. Since this game came out in 2019, I will warn that this video will feature gameplay and spoilers, so if you haven't played Sekiro and still don't want to be spoiled, consider this a warning. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a game created by From Software. It released back in March 2019 and received universal acclaim. It won Game of the Year awards, and according to an article from Destructoid back in August 2019, the game has sold over 3.8 million copies and is generally viewed as a successful new IP. Currently, the game is all we have when it comes to Sekiro content. Although successful, we have yet, and I predict will not, see any DLC or expansions to the base game, which is odd considering Activision published it. However, I don't consider this a bad thing. It's kinda nice just to have a game come out and stay as is. So, let's look back at Sekiro a year later to see what's so special about the game and if my opinion on it has changed since release. So, on a personal note, I love From Software. If I were to go back and look at overall playtime of games in the past decade, the Soulsborne series would be games I've played the most. That isn't to say they're the greatest games ever or anything, but the Dark Souls series and Bloodborne are favorites of mine, and I have nothing but love for them. I would love to do videos on them in the future. So when I heard FromSoft was making a new game where you were playing a ninja with a sick-ass prosthetic arm, I was sold. Some critics and fans were apprehensive at first because it wasn't going to be a Dark Souls 4 or a Bloodborne 2. Now, I also had expectations. Of course I expected a rather difficult game with larger-than-life boss fights and environmental storytelling, and From Software had earned some faith in me with their last 4 titles showing they can deliver. I mean, the last time they experimented with their formula was Bloodborne, and that's one of my favorites. So going in, I was probably a little hyped and was 100% sure this was going to be another great addition to my library. And it certainly was. Sekiro had that Miyazaki magic fans of the Souls games had come to expect. However, there were a few things missing. I loved it so much I played it, beat it, said I enjoyed it, and hadn't picked it up again until I replayed it for this video. Which was odd for a FromSoft title. Normally, the first time I would complete a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls, the first thing I'd do is replay it over and over again. The replayability factor, or lack of one, kinda threw me for a loop. My expectations were met, but it didn't give me that need to be a completionist I only get with FromSoft games. I questioned where Sekiro belonged in the catalog of great games FromSoft is building. Then a month went by and I wanted to replay it, but I found something else to play instead. Another month went by and I thought about doing a replay, but no, I just bought a new game, so I have to play that instead. Eventually, I had to admit the reason why I only wanted to play Sekiro one time and leave it be is, well, the game's pretty damn hard. I mean, I'm not the best at action games, but this one just wrecked me. I think it didn't help that I was simultaneously trying to learn how to play Sekiro while unlearning playing Sekiro like Dark Souls. I may have reached my limit of challenging, but once you win, you feel a sense of accomplishment when it came to this one. But this is 2020, and it's been 1 year, and I've decided to finally take another look at Sekiro. I'm going to look at the game, its strengths, its weaknesses, and everything else in between, and find out where it fits with other From Software games. So, the first big element of this game that's different from Dark Souls and Bloodborne is you play as Sekiro, or Wolf, or One-Armed Wolf, or Shinobi. In fact, it appears everyone has a name for him. The only one who doesn't know his name seems to be Sekiro.
What do you call yourself? Before I kill you, tell me your name. Tell me your name!
Unlike the aforementioned games, everyone who plays this one will experience the game through playing as Sekiro. You do not have the option to customize the look of your character. Sekiro has voice lines. He is a more developed character in a sense that he's just not a blank slate for players to build. Sekiro has goals, motivations, a reason for doing what he does. Because of this, the story is more focused than other FromSoft titles. Now, I think this is a positive for the game as a whole, and for players coming in who want to see what all the fuss is about, but aren't too keen on the seemingly non-existent plot of Souls and Bloodborne. For people who are already fans of the Soulsborne games, I think it's rather effective at letting everyone know, hey, this game is not like the others. So how is Sekiro as a character? Well, he's not going to win any awards for originality, but he serves the story. Sekiro is a war orphan who is adopted by the shinobi Owl. Like any good new dad, Owl connects with his adopted son by training him to be a cold-blooded ninja. During Sekiro's training, he is taught the Iron Code, which basically boils down to obey your father over everything else. At some point, after Sekiro has graduated from Owl's School for Gifted Shinobi, he is assigned to be a protector of a very important person, a child named Kuro, who carries with him a unique bloodline. The second rule of the Iron Code is to obey Kuro. The only person that can tell Sekiro otherwise is Owl. All of this is basically told to you from the opening cinematic. It sets up a plot twist you can see coming from a mile away. Eventually, Owl and Kuro will be at odds with one another sometime during the events of the game, and you, as Sekiro, will have to work through that conflict. Sekiro is a badass shinobi, a royal protector, and a son. In fact, many characters who know his connections to Kuro or Owl will often refer to Sekiro as Protector or Son of Owl. Sekiro is defined by his duty. Nothing really means much to him other than his duty to Kuro or Owl. It's Sekiro's motivation. As the player, we will always see this motivation while playing him. His shinobi prosthetic is a symbol of his loyalty and his past failures to fulfill his duty and what he's willing to do to achieve it. And also a pretty cool part of the gameplay, but we will get to that. Sekiro is willing to lose an arm, replace it with a device made exclusively for ninjas, and keep going so long as he can keep his oath to Lord Kuro. Every time we die while playing, we see his loyalty. Sekiro is honor-bound to Kuro, and because of Kuro's bloodline, Sekiro can defy death itself to fulfill his duty. It's not a 10 out of 10 great writing character arc or anything, but I think what's here is fine. And it complements what From Software are masters at, which is environmental storytelling and lore. So what about the other characters? Although the main cast is not as cryptic and ambiguous as the characters in Dark Souls and Bloodborne, they're still pretty interesting with mysteries to be pieced together. The three standouts for me are Ishin, Emma, and the Sculptor. Because Sekiro actually has conversations with people instead of characters dumping lore and exposition at you, the player, there's no way they could be the same as they were in Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Although I do like all of that while playing those games, I don't mind it missing from Sekiro. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the game is completely optional and all conversation. During the game, you will find various kinds of sake. You can take the alcohol back to certain characters and have these little conversations with them. Some of the conversations provide some background and history, and some are just kinda for fun. There is a setup that's explained better than any of the Souls games, in my opinion. Basically, the Ashina clan, led by Ishin Ashina, was able to take back their lands through violent and bloody war. After years have passed, the Ashina clan has grown a bit weaker and they are in danger of losing their lands again. There is conflict escalating between the Ashina clan and the Interior Ministry. Genichiro, Ishin's grandson, has determined the only way for this not to happen is to use Kuro's bloodline to become immortal and create an unstoppable army. However, a bloodline so powerful has consequences, but just like Sekiro, Genichiro's duty is to preserve the Ashina clan and he will stop at nothing to do so. Kuro is aware of the consequences of using the power of his bloodline. The side effects include immortality, plague upon the lands, and men and animals turning into demons. And because of this, he does not want to assist Genichiro with his goals. So the story goes from a rescue mission to an adventure to lift the curse of the bloodline. One of my favorite aspects of From Software games is how you can be given absolutely no clear objective for why you, the player, are doing what you're doing. Yet you don't really need one because of the well constructed world you're doing it in. For example, you don't need anyone to tell you why you're hunting beasts in Bloodborne because you can see the destruction in the streets and the citizens transforming right before your eyes. When you combine that with the lore you can find through reading item descriptions, paying attention to where you're finding those items in the first place, listening to that good old cryptic ambiguous exposition, and taking into account your actual impressions of the level, you start to get a better picture of what's going on. It's a unique way a game can tell a story, and although Sekiro is more focused, this environmental storytelling isn't lost. There's still tons of storytelling through the levels. The focus narrative even complements it. A good example is Simpo Temple. Sekiro is told by Ishin that one of the items needed to sever Kuro from the immortality of his bloodline will be a sword, because of course it's a sword, but a sword called the Mortal Blade. This sword is said to be hidden in Simpo Temple, but that's really all Ishin knows because the degenerate monks have been hiding in Simpo Temple all this time, and that's all we really have to go on. When you reach Simpo Temple, your eyes are assaulted with stunning mountains, colorful trees with falling leaves, and gorgeous temple grounds. I remember being awestruck the first time I played this game upon entering this area, and the same thing happened the second time. This does not look like a place where degenerate monks reside. However, the further you explore, you begin to think not everything is as it seems. The temple grounds are littered with corpses of what look to be average people in certain areas. Some of what I would assume are higher ranking monks have these demon centipede bugs in them that burst out and attack you when you're within striking distance. There's what I can best describe as a pinwheel graveyard, and it's kind of unsettling. There's a strange encounter with a knight that seems quite out of place as well. His last words are, well... Robert, which you may find odd for a name of a character in a game taking place in Japan, until you realize one of the tools you've been using are indeed Robert's firecrackers. These firecrackers are sold to you by a group who specialize in looting corpses. The point is, the more you explore, the more the initial beauty starts to fade and you begin to wonder, what the fuck is up with these monks? It's unsettling and made me uneasy when playing the first time, and even the second time, as I went in this time knowing more about the story and going out of my way to look for clues. None of this has been given to you in conversation, other than Ishin referring to the monks as degenerates. You discover all of this on your own through exploring the temple. Towards the end of Simpo Temple, you meet a new character who puts the rest of the pieces together for you. The monks, in their own twisted effort to achieve similar powers given to Kuro through his bloodline, experimented and sacrificed children to achieve a sort of Kuro surrogate. The girl who tells you this is the only child to survive the experiment. I think this sort of storytelling works well for Sekiro. Provide just enough structure and focus at the start, let the level fill in the details, then add more story to put it all together. From a story perspective alone, I would say Sekiro is a great starting point for anyone interested in the From Software catalog over the past decade, but were put off by everything appearing vague. I think it could ease players into the environmental storytelling enough to be interested in looking back at Dark Souls and Bloodborne and scratching that surface to discover what they didn't see before. So all in all, I did enjoy the story of Sekiro the second time around. Is it a little corny? Yeah, it is. Is the focus narrative a little rough around the edges? Absolutely. However, all the elements FromSoft puts in mix together well, and I find myself fascinated with the world. It leaves me wanting to explore further, and for me, that's a good feeling to have when playing a game.
I see. You carry the curse of the dragon's heritage.
The mortal blade, without question. I accept its power.
So now let's shift away from environments, characters, and story and really dig into the meat here. Although I don't think FromSoft gets enough credit when it comes to lore and storytelling, the fact is what most people are interested in when it comes to these games are the crazy difficulty and boss fights. It's their hook, for better or worse. Let's look at combat. When playing Sekiro, you have 3 ways to engage with enemies: swordplay, shinobi tools, and stealth. And the game wants you to master all 3 and eventually use all 3 together. When fighting enemies, most of the time there are 2 ways to bring them down. You can either reduce their health to 0 or break their posture and deliver a death blow. For most encounters, the game encourages you to go for the latter option. With a mixture of attacks and well-timed deflects, most enemies' posture will break well before their health is drained. This encourages the player to take advantage of the posture mechanic and encourages learning the rhythm of when to attack, when to deflect, and when to dodge. Sekiro is also in danger of having his posture broken as well, which encourages players to improve their timing responding to attacks. At first, the system seems like an easy-to-learn, difficult-to-master affair. However, the difficulty quickly amps up and players will have a hard time continuing until they've learned the basics. As you learn, you gain combat abilities through skill trees you unlock through the game. These skills can range from new ways to attack and counter enemies, to healing items working better, to better overall stats like your posture meter not building up as quickly. Although not exactly an RPG with stats and a traditional level up system, you do see Sekiro progress and get stronger throughout the game. The shinobi prosthetic spices up combat. Basically, you can attach a shinobi tool to your arm that serves a combat function. Are dogs too quick to swing a sword at? Are more mobile enemies avoiding you by jumping all over the place? Hit them with a shuriken. Is there a shield in between you and that death blow? Smash it with an axe. Need to create some space between Sekiro and a rampaging beast? Stun it with firecrackers. Calling them tools is a perfect description of what their use in combat is. If you properly utilize the correct one, whatever problem in the game becomes easier. There is a criticism I see about shinobi tools. Some players have said many of them feel gimmicky and useless, or they got into a habit of using a few select tools and not using the others. And I can definitely see that. However, for the second playthrough, I found myself trying to use more tools if a situation became too tough and what I was doing clearly wasn't working. I found sometimes impossible obstacles became much more manageable or flat out easy mode. I liked experimenting with different tools and figuring out more effective ways to take down tough enemies, especially during the first half of the game. I will say though, the closer I got to the end, the less I experimented with the shinobi tools and ended up relying on the ones I found the most effective and my swordplay. I don't know if it's this way by design, and even if it was, I'm not sure it's the best design choice. If there was ever another Sekiro game, I would love to see more of an emphasis on shinobi tools. I think From Software had 2 great combat systems set up, but they just didn't work as well together as they should have throughout the whole game. I would have loved to see myself experiment throughout the game, and maybe there's more to be seen that I may discover on a third playthrough. There really isn't much I have to say about the stealth aspect. It's fairly basic compared to other action stealth titles. I think stealth exists for 2 reasons in Sekiro. The first is you're playing a ninja and ninjas be stealthy. The second reason is to thin out the mobs. My worst experiences in Sekiro were getting overwhelmed by multiple enemies. I never once thought the combat was suited for dealing with 3+ dudes at a time, and being stealthy before you go in, sword swinging, makes encounters easier and much more fun in general. I believe the gameplay in Sekiro shines when it's a 1v1 encounter. Most of the bosses and mini-bosses take advantage of the duel-style setup, and these fights are the high points of the game, especially when it's another humanoid with a blade. Sword fights feel downright cinematic at times. Successfully clashing blades of the boss like Genichiro, chaining together perfect deflects and counterattacks, make him have to step back from you. Being able to put real pressure on an enemy and making them react to it is so damn satisfying. With a few exceptions like the unnecessary second Guardian Ape fight and the fake corrupted monk, most of the main boss encounters are unique and pretty fun to go toe-to-toe with. Some of the mini-bosses can be kind of a drag though. A few in particular are repeat enemy types that overstay their welcome. There was one reskin fight I did enjoy quite a bit though. In the beginning, you encounter a commander who uses a spear, and he's quite tough. He was actually my first wall in my replay. Then, towards the end of the game, you face a similar looking spear user with a more flashy, updated moveset. I kinda went into a mental roleplay mode where I wondered if the first one I thought was this one's student or something, so it sort of worked for me. However, fighting multiple headless, drunken swordsmen and those asshole kicking ninjas was a little too much for me to excuse, especially when I know From Software is capable of more variety than what they gave us. So keep in mind, everything from here on out is my experience. I'm sure others have different thoughts on this game, whether they love it, hate it, or were interested and remain interested but find it unplayable. This time around, I didn't feel pressured when playing. If I played it for a few hours, decided I wasn't enjoying myself, I would have stopped playing and picked another game to rant about. It wasn't that deep. I went in relaxed. I started to enjoy it more than my first time. I wasn't trying to grind it out and beat it just so I could say I completed the new crazy difficult FromSoft game. I'm also working stranger hours at my job, which led me to shorter play sessions, so I never really had the time to get frustrated. The other thing I noticed this time around were the common walls that many players get stuck on can't really be completely skipped, but most of the time there is other content to play when you feel yourself getting stuck. Genichiro is a great example. He will most likely be the first boss that makes people stop progressing for a prolonged period of time. What I did learn though, is you can just not fight him right away and explore other areas of the map. Upgrade your healing gourd a little bit, beat mini-bosses and increase your maximum health, and get better at the game playing new content instead of grinding for skills. There was more flexibility than I gave it credit for my first go-around. I've grown to like Sekiro more. I think my first playthrough, I approached it from a not-so-advantageous headspace and focused on the wrong things. I didn't really stop to appreciate anything. And I'm happy to know there is still more content to be discovered. There are 4 endings and I've only seen 2 and haven't conquered all of the bosses quite yet. So where does Sekiro fit in with Dark Souls and Bloodborne? I say it's a great introduction to From Software as a developer. There is a focused story, there is challenging but rewarding gameplay, and a fun detailed world to explore. It's a bit rough around the edges at times, and there are things I would certainly change that I've previously mentioned. But this is a wonderful game, and I'm glad From Software is confident enough to take chances and continue to create original games. They could have made another sequel, and I'm sure I would have loved it, but I'm glad they didn't. Anyone interested in Sekiro that may have not gave it a chance because they heard how difficult it was, or people who gave it a chance and then quit, I will suggest giving it a shot for the first time or one more time. And besides, if you can conquer Sekiro, you'll have no trouble with Bloodborne and Dark Souls. Thanks for watching.